It was a cold, quiet night in the small town of Greystone. The air was thick with fog, and the only sound came from crickets and frogs near the swamp. People locked their doors early. They believed the swamp was cursed. Strange things had happened there before. Lights, sounds. People said they saw shadows that didn't belong to any animal. But Loran, a lonely mechanic, didn't believe in ghost stories. He lived in a small wooden cabin at the edge of the swamp. He liked the quiet. He liked being away from people. Life had been hard. He lost his parents when he was young. The army took him in. After the war, he came back home. But he never really felt like he belonged. The swamp didn't judge him. It just listened. That night, while Loran sat fixing an old radio, something strange happened. He heard a voice. A soft, broken cry, like someone whispering through the trees. "Help, please, help me." Loran froze. He turned off the radio. Silence. Then again, the same voice, a little louder. "Please, anyone." It wasn't coming from his house. It wasn't the radio. It was coming from the swamp. Loran stood up and grabbed his flashlight. He opened the door and stepped into the fog. The air was thick, heavy. He could barely see 5 feet ahead. "Hello," he called out. "Is someone out there?" No answer. He walked slowly toward the sound. The mud squished under his boots. Trees stood tall like silent guards. Then he heard it again, clear this time. "Please, I need help." The voice wasn't normal. It sounded soft, echoing, and not completely human. Still, Loran didn't stop. Most people would have turned around and gone back home. But Loran wasn't most people. He had seen pain before. He had seen war. And that voice, whoever it was, sounded truly lost. He moved deeper into the swamp. The trees became thicker. Strange blue lights blinked in the distance. Maybe fireflies. Maybe not. Then, under a fallen tree near the water, he saw something glowing. Loran moved closer. There, trapped under thick roots, was a woman, or something like a woman. Her skin was silver blue and soft like silk. Her long white hair floated in the dirty water. Her eyes were closed. Her body was shaking. Loran stepped back, heart pounding. She wasn't human. She had long fingers, thin arms, and strange glowing marks on her skin. But her face looked like it was in pain. And her lips moved again. "Please, help." Loran didn't know what to do. Was this a trick? A dream? An alien? He looked around. No one else was there. Then she opened her eyes. Bright, glowing blue. They looked right at him, not with fear, but with hope, like she had been waiting for him. Without thinking, Loran dropped to his knees and began pulling the roots off her. They were thick and heavy. One root had wrapped around her leg tightly. "I've got you," he said. "Hang on." Her eyes stayed on him the whole time. She didn't speak again, but a soft light glowed from her chest, and for a second, Loran felt warmth in his hands. He pulled the last root off, and she gasped. Her body relaxed, but she didn't move. She was too weak. Loran looked around. If someone saw them now, he'd be in trouble. But he didn't care. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her. "I'm going to get you out of here," he whispered. He lifted her carefully. She was light, almost weightless. As he held her, the marks on her skin glowed faintly, and he felt like a soft wave passed through his mind. Images he didn't understand. Stars, fire, people running. But then it was gone. Loran shook his head and started walking back to the cabin. The woman didn't speak again, but her hand gripped his shirt tightly. She was scared. She needed him. And for the first time in years, Loran felt needed too. He didn't know who she was or where she came from. But deep down, something told him this was no accident. Something was coming. And this strange woman from the stars had brought it with her. The storm had begun. Not outside, but inside Loran's mind. He carried the alien woman through the thick swamp, her glowing skin softly lighting the fog around them. His boots slipped on wet leaves, but he never let her fall. Her breathing was slow and shallow. She held his shirt tight, like a scared child holding on to the only light in the dark. Lauren had carried wounded soldiers before. He had pulled men from burning tanks. But this was different. He didn't even know what she was. She wasn't human, but she wasn't a monster either. Something about her made him feel calm. When they finally reached his cabin, he kicked the door open and gently laid her down on his old couch. She shivered, her wet hair leaving glowing trails on the cushion. Her silver skin flickered with tiny blue lights, like stars in the night. Lauren grabbed a blanket, covered her, and stoked the fire. The soft orange light met the blue of her body. The colors danced. He stared at her. What was she? Why was she here? Was she alone? Suddenly, her eyes opened again, slowly, weakly, the same glowing blue as before. Lauren spoke softly. "You're safe now. You're in my home. I don't know what's going on, but I'll help you." She tried to sit up, but her body shook. Then she did something unexpected. She reached into a small pouch on her leg. Lauren hadn't even noticed it before, and pulled out a small silver disc. It shimmered like liquid metal. She placed it on her chest. The disc glowed and floated up, stopping near her mouth. Then it spoke. Not in her voice, but in a calm, soft, robotic tone. "I am Valora, Royal Scout of the Star Clans. My vessel has fallen. I am injured. I seek refuge." Lauren stepped back, stunned. The disc translated her thoughts. He spoke slowly. "Who are the Star Clans?" The disc responded, her lips never moving. "A union of peaceful planets. My mission was to explore unknown systems. But I was chased, hunted, crashed." Her breathing grew faster. Her body trembled. She was afraid. "They are coming," the disc said. "They followed me. They saw your world." Lauren's blood turned cold. "Who's coming?" Her eyes met his. A tear, real, glowing blue, fell from her cheek. "The Nyrix hunters. They destroy. They take. They leave nothing." Lauren sat down, trying to think. This wasn't just about a strange visitor anymore. This was a warning. "Why Earth?" he asked. Valora's disc replied slowly. "They sensed human life. Energy. Warmth. They feed on hope. And your world has too much of it." Lauren shook his head. "How do I stop them? I'm just a mechanic. I fix old cars, not fight space monsters." Valora reached out with her real hand, not the translator, not the disc. Just her hand. She touched his wrist. And the moment she did, Lauren felt a rush of visions. Explosions, stars dying, giant ships, people running, fires swallowing entire cities. But also, a boy running through a field, a family laughing, a woman holding a child, a human giving bread to a stranger. It wasn't just her memories. It was what she saw in him, and what she saw in humanity. Lauren gasped and pulled his hand back. The fire crackled beside them. "Why? Why show me this?" This time, she spoke with her own voice, weak, shaking, but real. "Because you were the only one who came." That hit him hard. No one else had listened to the cry from the swamp. Not the town. Not the authorities. Not even the animals. Only him. A forgotten man in a forgotten cabin. "I heard you," he said softly. Valora smiled for the first time. It was a soft smile. Tired, but full of thanks. Suddenly, the power flickered. Lauren looked up. The lights blinked once, then again, then died. Complete silence. Then, a low hum. A sound that didn't belong to anything on Earth. Valora sat up, panic on her face. "They are close." Lauren ran to the window. Through the fog, a strange red light blinked deep in the swamp. Not fire. Not headlights. Something else. Something unnatural. Is it them? He asked. Valora nodded. Lauren grabbed his old shotgun from above the fireplace. It was old, dusty, but loaded. I don't know who they are, but they picked the wrong planet. Valora stood, shaking but stronger now. The disc floated again near her chest. You must not face them alone. I'm not alone, Lauren said, eyes locked on hers. You're here. Outside, the wind picked up. Trees bent. The ground rumbled softly. Something landed in the swamp. Lauren stepped onto the porch, shotgun ready. In the distance, 3 tall figures moved in the fog. Silent, metallic, glowing red eyes. They weren't walking. They were floating. Valora came beside him, a faint light glowing from her palms now. Her energy was returning. They won't stop until I'm dead, she whispered, or until Earth burns. Lauren didn't flinch. Well, let's give them a fight they won't forget. As the first alien hunter moved closer, its metal limbs hissing, Lauren's finger moved to the trigger. This wasn't just about saving her anymore. It was about saving everyone. The swamp was no longer silent. Something had changed in the air, like the whole forest was holding its breath. Even the frogs had stopped croaking. No bugs, no birds, just the slow hiss of wet leaves under heavy, unnatural movement. Lauren stood on his porch with his old shotgun pressed tight to his shoulder. The moonlight was pale and weak, unable to shine through the thick fog. But through it, he saw them. 3 tall figures moving without sound, floating just inches above the ground. They looked like shadows wearing armor. But their eyes glowed bright red, and every time they blinked, the trees around them seemed to bend away. Behind him, Valora stood quietly, her breathing calm, but her eyes locked on the intruders. The marks on her skin glowed brighter now. Her strength was slowly returning, but she wasn't ready to fight alone. Not yet. Lauren whispered without turning his head, "Tell me what they are." Valora stepped beside him, her voice low and grim. "They are Nyrix hunters. Not alive. Not dead. They don't feel. They don't fear. They only follow orders. And they never stop until the target is erased." "Great," Lauren muttered. "And I thought tax collectors were bad." He aimed at the closest one. The hunter hovered slowly toward the cabin, scanning the ground. Its chest opened slightly, revealing small blue lights that flickered like breathing. It wasn't just scanning. It was smelling the air, searching for her presence. Then it stopped. Its head turned toward the cabin. It knew. Lauren fired. The shotgun blast ripped through the fog and slammed into the hunter's chest. Sparks flew, and the machine jerked backward, spinning once. Lauren pumped the gun again. But the hunter didn't fall. It straightened, smoke pouring from a crack in its armor. It looked at him and screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was metal grinding against metal, a high-pitched roar that felt like knives in the ears. Lauren staggered. Valora reached forward, her hand glowing. She raised her palm and whispered in her language. The hunter stopped screaming and began twitching. Its chest lights blinked fast. It jerked left, then right, then exploded in a burst of blue flame, crashing to the ground in a pile of burning wires. Lauren stared at her. "What did you just do?" "Overloaded its core. They're connected to each other. But I'm weak. I can't do that again. Not yet." The second hunter leaped into the air. It flew above the trees and landed behind the cabin. Lauren turned, his instincts kicking in. "It's trying to flank us." Before he could run, the wall behind them exploded inward. Wood flew. Smoke filled the air. Lauren was thrown to the floor. The hunter walked through the hole it made, taller than a door, covered in black armor. Its red eyes locked onto Valora. It raised its arm. A cannon began forming on its wrist, shifting and unfolding like living steel. Valora tried to lift her hand, but her knees buckled. She was too weak. Lauren grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and charged with a yell. He swung hard, right into the hunter's arm. The cannon flew off balance. The shot missed and blew a hole through the wall. The hunter grabbed Lauren by the throat and lifted him. He struggled, choking, feet off the floor. Velora's eyes flared. No. She slammed her glowing palm onto the hunter's back. The armor sparked, but this one was stronger. It turned and punched her, sending her flying across the room. She crashed into the table and didn't move. Lauren, still gasping, looked down. His boots scraped the floor, trying to find balance. The hunter's red eyes stared into his, analyzing him. But Lauren wasn't done. With his free hand, he reached into the hunter's chest panel, where the shotgun had cracked it, and yanked hard on the wires inside. Sparks exploded. The hunter dropped him and staggered backward. Lauren hit the ground and rolled. Then he saw a glowing blue tool that had fallen from Velora's pouch. A sharp, humming blade, alien tech. He grabbed it without thinking and ran. He slid under the hunter's legs and stabbed the blade deep into the back of its knee joint. The hunter screamed again and collapsed. Lauren stood, raised the shotgun one more time, and fired point-blank into the open chest. This time, the hunter stayed down. Smoke filled the room. Fire crackled in the broken wood. Lauren turned to Velora, who was slowly waking up. "You okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She coughed. "That was close. I noticed." He helped her sit up. "You fought like one of us," she said softly. "No," he said. "I fought like a human." But there was no time to rest. The third hunter was still out there. They heard the sound, a humming, growing louder. Lauren looked outside and saw something rising above the trees. Not a hunter, a ship. Sleek, black, sharp as a blade. It hovered silently above the swamp, scanning the area. Velora stood, swaying. "That's a scout drone. If it reports back, more will come, many more." Lauren's mind raced. "Can we destroy it?" Velora shook her head, not without a signal jammer. Lauren snapped his fingers. "Wait, I have an old radio tower behind the cabin. We used to use it during storms. Maybe I can rewire it, block their signal." "You don't have time," she warned. Lauren grabbed tools and wires. "Then I'll make time." 20 minutes later, Lauren climbed the rusty tower, sweat pouring down his face, hands shaking. The ship hovered above, still scanning. Any moment, it would send the signal. Velora stood guard below, eyes on the sky, body ready to collapse again. Lauren connected the last wire, sparked it to life, and slammed his hand onto the control panel. A loud pulse echoed from the tower. The ship stuttered. It stopped scanning. Then, it exploded. The sky lit up. Pieces rained into the swamp below. Lauren slid down the tower and landed beside Velora, both of them falling to the ground, laughing between gasps. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Lauren said. "We did it." But their joy didn't last long. Velora looked toward the stars. "That was only a scout. The real army is coming." Lauren's smile faded. He looked at the swamp, quiet again, and he knew this was just the beginning. The swamp was still again. Smoke from the destroyed drone drifted over the trees. The broken walls of Lauren's cabin stood as silent proof. This war had already reached Earth. Lauren sat on the muddy ground with his back against a fallen beam. His shirt was torn, his arm was bruised, but he was alive. Velora knelt beside him, using a glowing device to heal the burn marks on his shoulder. Her touch was gentle, her face was calm, but her glowing blue eyes held deep worry. "They know now," she said. "They'll come with more. Bigger, stronger, smarter." Lauren looked at the smoking sky. "So what do we do?" Velora hesitated. Then she stood up and walked over to a metal box she'd recovered from her ship's wreckage. With a quiet command in her alien language, the box opened. Inside were shards of broken tech, glowing chips, and strange round stones pulsing with light. "This is all I could save," she said. "Not much, but maybe enough." Lauren stood beside her. "You said they don't feel anything, right? No pain, no fear." She nodded. "But they follow signals?" he asked. Valora looked up, realizing what he was thinking. "Yes. They lock onto targets with sound, heat, and movement." Lauren's eyes lit up. "Then maybe we can trick them." That night, they worked together. Lauren used old car parts, wires from the radio tower, batteries, and pieces from Valora's alien tech. Valora taught him how to power the glowing stones, which reacted to thoughts and emotions. Together, they built decoys, fake targets that gave off heat and sound. They dug small holes in the swamp and placed metal scraps inside, covered them in wet leaves. They tied ropes between trees, rigged explosive traps using gas cans and old tools from Lauren's shed. Lauren looked at one of the traps and chuckled. "Feels like I'm back in the army again. Except this time, I'm fighting robots with glowing eyes." Valora didn't smile. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "These aren't just machines. They are programmed to learn. If we survive the first wave, the next one will adapt." Lauren tightened a bolt and grinned. "Then we just have to be smarter." The next day, the wind shifted. The birds flew away. Valora stepped out of the cabin, scanning the sky. "They're here." Lauren wiped sweat from his forehead. "How many?" She pointed upward. 3 dark shapes pierced through the clouds. Hunter pods, falling fast. The ground shook when they landed. The first hunter stepped out. It was twice the size of the ones before. Heavily armored, glowing brighter, its hands now sharp like blades. The second was sleeker, faster, scanning everything like a snake. The third floated silently. It didn't have legs. Only a glowing sphere where its lower half should be. It hummed quietly, listening. Lauren and Valora hid in the trees, breath shallow. "Now," he whispered. Valora nodded. The trap was set. As the first hunter stepped into the swamp, it triggered a tripwire. A gas can exploded near its feet, sending smoke into the air. The second hunter zipped left, but fell into a hidden pit, crashing into car spikes covered by water. The third hunter hovered calmly, spinning slowly, scanning for heat. Valora held her breath. The glowing orb above her heart flickered. If it caught them, it was over. Lauren threw a heated metal decoy into the open. The orb immediately turned and fired a bright red beam, blowing up the decoy. Valora looked at him, impressed. "That worked." "Just wait," Lauren said. "They're still guessing." Then the ground trembled again. From behind the fallen trees, a new shape emerged. A Nyrix commander, 7 feet tall, glowing red lines running across its armor. Its face had no eyes, only a single red slit. Valora whispered, "That's a war leader." The commander scanned the swamp, and then spoke, but not with words. Its voice came directly into their minds. "You hide. You fight. You delay the end. Pointless." Lauren winced. It felt like his skull was vibrating. Valora gritted her teeth. "They've started mental attacks." The commander raised its hand, and the 3 hunters began to repair themselves, pieces floating from the swamp to their bodies. Lauren shouted, "Now." He pressed a button. All the traps went off at once. Explosions shook the swamp. Fire and light filled the air. Trees fell. One hunter was torn in half. The other lost its legs. The commander staggered but stayed standing. Valora stepped forward, her hands glowing brighter than ever. She shouted in her language, and a shockwave of light burst from her chest, blasting the last hunter apart. But the commander didn't fall. It raised both hands and began pulling metal from around the swamp, cars, tools, fences, twisting them into blades that floated around it like sharp birds. Lauren stepped in front of Valora. "You want her? You'll have to go through me." The commander stared at him. You are nothing. A broken race. Weak. Lauren grinned. Maybe, but we've got heart. And you're standing in my swamp. He pulled the hidden wire, connected to the last trap. The commander looked down too late. A metal rod, rigged with Velora's glowing energy stone, exploded under its feet. The energy surged through its armor, breaking the red glow. The floating blades dropped. The commander screeched, its voice turning static and wild. Velora stepped beside Lauren and whispered, "Together." She placed her hand on his back. The light from her palm spread into Lauren. His body glowed faintly. His heartbeat slowed. And in one final push, he ran forward, jumped onto the weak commander's chest, and slammed the alien blade right through the red slit. The commander froze, and then shattered into hundreds of glowing shards. Silence. After the battle, smoke curled over the swamp. Bodies of broken hunters lay scattered. The cabin was gone, burned, smashed, but the stars above were clear, peaceful. Velora sat beside Lauren, who leaned against a tree, exhausted. You fought like no one I've ever seen, she said. Lauren chuckled. You say that like you've seen a lot of humans. She looked up. I have, but none like you. They both looked at the sky. She frowned. This won't be the end. I know, Lauren said, but next time, we won't just survive. He looked at her with quiet strength. We'll win. The swamp was burning behind them. Smoke curled into the night sky, glowing red and gold. The twisted metal of broken Nyrix hunters lay scattered like giant bones. Lauren's cabin, the place where it all began, was now a pile of splinters, ash, and memory. But they were alive. Lauren and Velora stood side by side, covered in dust and sweat, bruised, wounded, changed. We can't stay here, Velora said, her voice low. Lauren looked around. No, too many saw the fire. Someone's going to come. They'll think I'm the enemy. They'll be wrong, he replied. But deep down, he wasn't sure they'd listen. The town of Greystone. By morning, the news had spread like wildfire. Massive explosion in the swamp. Alien sighting confirmed by multiple locals. Is this the first contact or an invasion? Helicopters flew overhead. Military trucks rolled into the dirt roads of Greystone. Satellite vans parked outside gas stations. People gathered in groups, scared, whispering. Some believed. Most didn't, but they all agreed on one thing. Something unnatural had happened. Lauren and Velora watched from the edge of the woods. Lauren had grabbed a hoodie from the ruins and covered her in a long brown coat and hat, but her glowing blue eyes couldn't be hidden for long. We need to tell them the truth, Lauren said. They need to hear it from you. No, Velora said firmly. They will not trust me. Then they'll trust me. She looked at him, tired but proud. You still believe in your people. I have to. Inside the emergency clinic, Lauren walked into the town's small clinic with Velora beside him. His arm was bandaged. Hers was glowing faintly beneath her sleeve. Nurses stopped in their tracks. A doctor dropped his clipboard. A little boy stared at Velora's strange skin, mouth open. Then someone screamed. She's one of them. Panic hit the room like a wave. People ran. Foams came out. Lauren stepped in front of her, raising his hands. Wait. She's not here to hurt anyone. She saved us. She saved this whole town. But no one listened. In less than 5 minutes, armed soldiers burst through the doors. Devon, on the ground, hands up. Lauren dropped to his knees. Velora raised her hands slowly, eyes calm, even as red laser dots danced across her chest. Please, Lauren begged. You don't understand. She's the reason we're not dead right now. A soldier stepped forward, gun pointed. That thing is alien tech. Classified. We're taking her. Lauren's voice rose. She's a person, not tech. The soldiers didn't blink. They cuffed her with strange glowing bands and pushed her toward the truck. Lauren ran after her, but was stopped by two soldiers. One punched him in the gut. He fell, coughing, mud on his lips. Valora didn't resist. She just looked back at him, eyes glowing gently. "Don't stop speaking," she whispered. "Truth is your weapon now." And then they were gone. Military holding facility, 18 miles outside town. The building looked like a warehouse, but deep underground, it was something else. Valora sat inside a glass cell. Cold, sterile, silent. Men in suits watched her through screens. One man, Director Harlan, paced in front of the cell. "She's communicating with him." "That human." "The mechanic. What's his name?" "Lauren Fay," an officer replied. "Ex-military. Quiet record. Keeps to himself." Harlan stared through the glass. "Bring him in." Back in town, a battle of words. While Valora was locked away, Lauren did what he could. He didn't fight with fists now. He fought with truth. He walked into town meetings. He went to churches, schools, gas stations. He told everyone who would listen. "She saved me. She saved us. You saw the sky light up. You heard the screams. That wasn't from Earth. That was war. War from beyond. And she was the only one fighting for us." Some people believed him. Some didn't. Some called him crazy. Others called him a hero. One local news channel aired his interview. Within 12 hours, it had over 10 million views. Inside the facility. The test. Director Harlan stepped into Valora's cell with two guards. "Why Earth?" he asked coldly. "Why hide here?" Valora stood, her skin still glowing faintly. "I did not choose this world. I crashed. I survived. I warned you. And what do you want now?" "I want to help." Harlan sneered. "Help? We don't need help from creatures like you." Valora stared at him, her voice steady. "Then you will need help from the ashes, because that is what the Nerix will leave behind." The lights flickered. Something was wrong. Suddenly, sirens blared. Red alert. Base breach. The Nerix had tracked her. Somehow, some way, they had found her energy signature. 3 Nerix ships entered Earth's atmosphere without warning. 2 landed in the desert. 1 came for the facility. Explosions rocked the underground chamber. Alarms screamed. Guards ran. Harlan panicked. "What's happening?" A young technician yelled. "They're breaching every gate, sir. They're Inside the glass cell, Valora closed her eyes and whispered a single word. "Release." The cuffs around her wrists clicked open. The cell door slid away on its own, unlocked not by Earth tech, but by her command. She stepped out, calm like a storm ready to rise. Lauren returns. As chaos filled the base, Lauren, who had followed a tip from a sympathetic soldier, arrived just in time. He sprinted through fire and falling walls, grabbing a fallen guard's weapon. He found Valora walking calmly through smoke. "Didn't I tell you I'd always have your back?" he called out. She turned and smiled. "You are very late." Together, they fought side by side. Lauren used his mind, his traps, his human instincts. Valora used her light, her technology, and her strength. Soldiers who once feared her now watched in awe. The shift in humanity's heart. When the last hunter fell, burned by both bullet and alien flame, the humans looked at her, not with fear, but with respect. Director Harlan stepped out from the rubble, eyes wide. "You saved us," he said. Valora didn't smile. "Now do you understand?" He nodded slowly. "I do." And for the first time, he said the words she had waited to hear. "Welcome to Earth." For the first time in Earth's modern history, an alien stood among humans, not as an enemy, but as a warrior, a protector, and a friend. Valora had been freed. Lauren had proven himself. But the war was just beginning. Glo Baal Emerg Ensui. Code Glak. 3 days after the attack on the military facility, Earth changed. The sky above certain regions flickered unnaturally, like a fabric tearing. World governments confirmed it. Nerix warships had begun appearing in low orbit. Hundreds of satellites vanished without explanation. Communication blackouts spread across parts of Asia, Africa, and South America. And then came the message, not through radios, not through screens, but through people's minds. Everyone, every child, every adult, heard the same cold, emotionless voice in their heads. Surrender the star blood, or Earth will burn. People fell to their knees. Animals ran wild. Planes crashed. The world went quiet. The Nerix had spoken. Council of Defense. Secret meeting. Washington, D.C. Lauren stood in a room filled with military generals, presidents, scientists, and leaders from all over the world. Valora stood beside him, wrapped in white armor made from parts of her fallen ship and Earth's salvaged tech. A world leader asked, "Why would they come this far for you?" Valora answered clearly, "Because my blood holds the key to what they fear. I carry something they cannot steal, something they can never make." "What is it?" She paused. Then, with a glance at Lauren, she said the word, "Hope." The truth about DHENYRX. Valora stood in front of a giant screen, explaining the truth about the enemy. The Nerix were once living beings, flesh and blood. But long ago, they chose to remove emotion from their species. They replaced their hearts with logic, their bodies with machines. They killed weakness, and with it, they killed beauty. Now they lived like viruses, spreading from planet to planet, consuming everything with life, stealing knowledge and burning everything else. "They don't want me," she said. "They want to destroy what I represent, and they want to make sure humans never rise." The room went silent. Lauren stepped forward. "Then it's time we show them we're not just soft creatures made of skin and fear. We're stubborn. We're wild. And we protect our own." Preparing Earth's defense. Every nation began to work together. For once, there were no flags, no borders, just survival. Lauren and Valora became the heart of the defense movement. She offered advanced knowledge, how to block Nerix signals, how to shield the mind from their mental whispers, and how to weaponize emotion. Emotion was the one thing the Nerix couldn't understand, and that made it powerful. Together, they built weapons not powered by hate, but by unity. Children in bunkers drew pictures of stars and sent them to soldiers. Farmers turned tractors into armor-plated barricades. Cotters built new firewalls in basements. Artists painted images of hope on walls across the globe. This wasn't just a war. It was a human uprising. The first strike. The Nerix sent their scouts. Sleek black ships, buzzing like insects, flew into cities at night. But this time, they were met with resistance. Lauren led a team of hybrid fighters, humans with armor powered by Valora's alien energy stones. In Tokyo, a 12-year-old deaf girl used her understanding of vibrations to build a sensor grid that stopped an entire squadron. In Brazil, a group of street musicians used sonic weapons crafted from their instruments, turning music into fire. In Nigeria, solar-powered towers built by teenage engineers fried an entire Nerix drop pod before it touched the ground. Everywhere, people were fighting back. Everywhere, human creativity burned brighter than machine logic. The sacrifice. But the cost was high. In New York, the Nerix released a mental virus, turning people against each other with fear. Lauren's childhood friend, Marcus, became infected. He walked straight into enemy fire to save a group of trapped children, and never came back. Lauren found his broken body under the ruins of a subway station. He cried for the first time in years. Valora stood beside him, her voice shaking. "I understand now why your species fights so hard." He looked up, pain in his eyes. "Because we don't want to lose what makes us human. Deiki Finalsignal. One night, Valora woke suddenly. Her heartstone glowed brighter than ever. "They're here," she whispered. Lauren sat up. "Who?" "The primary fleet. The main hive. Their queen is coming." He stood and looked at her. "Then we hit first. Humanity's earliest end. In Earth's orbit, hidden by clouds, the Nyrix mothership opened its black petals like a flower of death. Inside, millions of drones waited. But Earth was ready. Satellites powered by Valora's tech blinked to life. The sky turned gold as thousands of human ships, jetpacks, sky rigs, and aerial drones rose from the surface. Lauren led the first wave, riding a glider built from alien metal and motorcycle parts. Valora flew beside him, her palms glowing blue, her wings of light wide across the sky. As they rose toward the stars, the people of Earth watched. Some from rooftops, some from bunkers, some with hands over their hearts. They didn't cheer. They didn't scream. They just whispered one word, passed from mouth to mouth across the globe. Fight. And so they did. A mechanic. An alien. A planet that refused to kneel. The stars were on fire. Above Earth, space had turned into a battlefield. Blue sparks. Red lasers. Explosions blooming like flowers in the night. But this wasn't just a battle of ships and weapons. This was a battle of meaning. Of what it meant to feel. To protect. To love. And at the center of it all, flew a human and an alien. Side by side. The heart of the storm. Lauren gripped the controls of his hybrid fighter. A patchwork of Earth metal and alien tech. It groaned, shook, and threatened to fall apart every second. But it was fast. And it was his. Beside him, flying through space without a ship, was Valora, her body glowing with blue light, wings of pure energy flowing from her shoulders. Her hands moved through space, throwing shields, ripping apart enemy drones, whispering words into the stars. "Lauren," she said through the comlink in his ear. "The Queen is in the core. How do we get there?" "You don't," she said. "I do." He frowned. "We do this together." Valora hesitated. "If I die inside that ship, the war ends. But if you die, Earth will fall with you." Lauren smiled, his face smeared with ash and sweat. "If I die, it means I never answered the cry you made in that swamp. So no, this ends together." She stared at him through space, then nodded. Together. Inside the Nyrix hive ship, the hive's corridors were alive. Metal pulsed like veins. The walls listened. The air was cold but hummed with power. The Queen sat in the core, her body too massive to move, grown into the throne of the ship itself. Her voice echoed in every mind, whispering thoughts like knives. "You feel. You cry. You love. That makes you weak." Lauren and Valora stepped into the core. The Queen's head turned, eyes glowing red. "The human speaks. Let him speak his final words." Lauren stepped forward. He didn't have armor like her. No glowing weapons. Just a handmade rifle, a scared face, and a beating heart. "You think emotions make us weak. That's your mistake." The Queen narrowed her eyes. "Emotion leads to pain." Lauren smiled. "Yeah, but it also leads to music, to poetry, to kindness, to sacrifice. You're just afraid of it." "Fear is inefficient," she hissed. "Exactly," Lauren said. "And that's why you'll lose." The final battle. The Queen screamed, not with sound, but with psychic force. Waves of pressure slammed through the chamber. Lauren dropped to his knees, blood dripping from his nose. Valora stepped in front of him, shielding him with her light. "You can't win with logic alone," she said. "You don't understand connection. That's why you're broken." The Queen roared. Tentacles of black metal shot toward them. Lauren stood, despite the pain. He raised a strange round object, a memory crystal, powered by Valora's core. He had filled it with recordings of human life. Children laughing, mothers crying, musicians playing, soldiers holding each other as they died. He threw it. It shattered against the Queen's shell. The memories hit her mind like lightning. She paused. She twitched. What is this? She saw things she had never allowed herself to feel. A woman holding her husband's hand in a hospital. A dog licking the tears from a boy's cheek. A father giving his last piece of bread to his starving daughter. A young mechanic walking into a swamp because he heard a cry. The Queen screamed again, this time in fear. Velora took the chance. She flew upward, pulled the light from her own chest, and drove it into the Queen's core. The explosion was silent, a wave of blue that pulsed outward, turning black metal to dust. The fall of the hive. Outside, every Nyrix ship stopped, then flickered, then fell. Across the sky, across the oceans, across all continents, the war ended in one moment. People looked up from bunkers, from fields, from cities, and watched as stars returned to peace. The aftermath. Loren woke up in a hospital bed. His body hurt. His mind felt like it had run 1,000 miles. But he was alive. Beside him sat a small girl, holding a flower. "Are you the alien fighter?" she asked shyly. Loren smiled. "I'm just the guy who listened." The door opened. Velora walked in. Her armor was gone. She wore a long coat over a simple earth-made dress. Her skin still glowed faintly, but her face was softer now, kinder. She sat beside him. "You made the final move," she said. "I didn't expect that." He looked at her. "I learned from the best." 1 month later, the world had changed. The cities rebuilt together. Earth became a planet of shared purpose. Countries that once fought now traded stories of battle and survival. A new school was built in Greystone, the swamp town where it all started. It was called the Velora Loren Institute of Intergalactic Peace. Children from all over Earth, and soon from other galaxies, would come to learn what it meant to feel, to protect, and to hope. The final message. One evening, Velora stood in the swamp, the same place where she had once cried for help, weak and alone. Now she stood tall. Loren joined her. "I'm sending a message out," she said, "to other peaceful races, telling them Earth is safe, that it's ready." "For peace?" Loren asked. "For connection." They looked at the stars. A breeze passed over the water. Then Velora turned and asked, "Why did you come into the swamp that night? Why not just ignore the voice, like everyone else?" Loren didn't answer right away. He just smiled and said softly, "Because that's the human answer."